The forest was alive tonight, alive in the way nightmares breathe. Wind screamed through the trees like a hunted thing, bending branches until they cracked and wailed. And through that darkness, beneath the blood-soaked sky, she ran. Evelyn Drace, half shifter, half human. A curse carved into flesh and bone. Her bare feet tore through the frozen soil, mud slick with rain and blood. The scent of iron filled her lungs with every ragged breath. Behind her, the forest echoed with pursuit. The pounding of paws, the hiss of steel, the low chant of wolves that once called her kin. They weren't chasing a stranger. They were chasing their shame, their alpha's daughter. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown, every step a dare. Lightning split the clouds, and for a fleeting moment, the world burned white, her torn dress clinging to her skin, her eyes wide with wild fear and something else beneath it. Defiance. She shouldn't have survived this long. The pack made sure of that. A howl broke through the storm. Deep. Familiar. Her father's voice. The sound of authority twisted by rage. The ground shuddered beneath her as she pushed harder, lungs burning, chest heaving. The rain fell in sheets, and her vision blurred. But she couldn't stop. Not now. Not when the night was the only thing still hiding her. Her pulse roared in her ears. Too loud, too human. She bit her lip until she tasted blood. The shift inside her clawed for release, silver light pulsing under her skin like trapped fire. But it wouldn't come. Not tonight. Not when she needed it most. Something in her was broken, something that should have made her strong. The wolf inside her trembled, chained by fear and shame, refusing to answer her call. Please. The word escaped like a ghost, swallowed by the wind. Then came the whispers. Not voices she could name. Not of wolves. Not of men. Something older. Something that had watched from the shadows since before the packs drew their first blood oath. They called her name. Not the one she bore in the pack, but the one hidden in the prophecy. Evelyn of the bloodline broken. Her legs faltered. She stumbled, catching herself on a tree slick with rain. The bark scraped her palm, and silver light flickered beneath her skin again, just for an instant. Enough to make the forest hush. Even the howls stopped. She looked down at her trembling hands, and the memory struck like lightning. The ceremony, the rejection, the Alpha's decree. You are no daughter of mine. You are the sin of your mother's blood. The pack had circled her that night under the full moon, eyes gleaming, teeth bared, not with hunger, but disgust. Her father stood at the center, blade gleaming, as if cutting her free from his bloodline could erase what she was. Half-blood, half-shifter, half-monster. That was the night her mother's name was burned from the ancestral stones. The night Evelyn stopped being one of them. The wind tore through the forest again, shaking her back into the present. They were close. She could smell them now, wet fur, steel, and fury. Her heart pounded so loud it drowned the rain. The forest opened up ahead, and there it was, the edge of the world, the cliffs of Duskville. She froze. Below lay nothing but darkness. A vast chasm swallowed the earth, the faint shimmer of water far below catching flashes of moonlight through the storm. Her breath hitched. The tales came rushing back. The forbidden lands, the vampire dominion, the realm no wolf ever returned from. Better their fangs than my father's blade, she whispered, her voice shaking, small, raw. Behind her, branches cracked. Growls closed in. She looked once more into the void, and jumped. The world vanished into a rush of wind and water. The scream died in her throat as she hit the river below, the impact stealing her breath and painting her world in white agony. Cold. So cold it felt alive. She tried to swim, but her limbs felt heavy, her body numb. The current dragged her under, spinning her through blackness and broken light. And then, silence. The storm above faded to a distant hum. The water around her pulsed with a strange light, silver, swirling, like veins of moonfire. It licked at her wounds, mending what should have been fatal. Her eyes fluttered open. The surface rippled with reflections, light, shadow, and red. Two eyes stared down at her from the riverbank. Crimson, ancient, burning with hunger and something dangerously close to fascination. The shape that emerged from the mist was no wolf. Tall, lean, wrapped in darkness like it belonged to him. His steps were soundless, his gaze sharp enough to cut through water and bone alike. The air around him shifted. The storm bent. The night held its breath. Evelyn tried to move, to fight, to speak. But the water pulled her deeper, and her vision dimmed to fading silver. His voice followed her into the black. Smooth, cold, commanding. Mine. And then, nothing. The forest was silent again. The blood moon faded behind the clouds, and the river carried its secret deeper into the night. She was born to unite two worlds, but hunted by both. One heartbeat away from death, she fell into the arms of the monster she was destined to love. If you could feel her heartbeat pounding in the dark, if your soul stirred when she jumped into that storm, then you already belong here. Subscribe to Moonlight Mate Stories, where every shadow hides a love worth burning for. The world returns to her slowly, not as light, but as sound. The slow drip of water, the low hum of a piano, the whisper of fire breathing across old stone. Evelyn's eyes flutter open to candlelight bending through smoke. She's lying on silk sheets the color of spilled wine. The air tastes metallic, blood and perfume. Both ancient and new, her throat burns, her wrists ache, her heart still beats. She's alive. But where? A chandelier sways overhead, its crystals fractured by shadows. The walls, tall, arched, carved with runes, breathe faintly as though they too remember pain. Then, from somewhere beyond the haze, a voice cuts through. Calm, smooth, and impossibly close. Kael, quietly. You wake faster than I expected. Her pulse leaps. She doesn't need to turn to know he's there. His voice carries a strange weight, cold but not cruel. Commanding but laced with curiosity. She pushes herself up, groaning. Where am I? There's a pause, the sound of leather, of footsteps slow and deliberate across marble. Kael, home, for now. Her head snaps toward him. He stands near the piano, tall, wrapped in black. The candles bend toward him as if the fire itself recognizes his power. His eyes, crimson at the edges, fading into molten gold, study her the way a predator studies something it doesn't yet want to kill. Evelyn's breath stumbles. Her instincts scream and run, but her body refuses to obey. She swallows hard, tasting fear and defiance. You're one of them. Kael, if by them you mean the reason you're not dead, then yes. He moves closer. Not a step wasted. His presence devours the space between them. And suddenly the flickering flames dance on her skin. She backs up until her shoulders hit cold stone. His gaze lowers. Not in lust, but in calculation. He tilts his head slightly, the faintest smirk curling at the corner of his mouth. Kael. Evelyn Drace. Her breath catches. I didn't tell you my name. Kael. You didn't need to. He closes the final distance, and before she can retreat, his hand lifts, fingers brushing the inside of her wrist. The contact sears through her like lightning. Her blood glows faintly, silver threads racing beneath her skin. The torches flare in answer. Kael, low, reverent. You smell like prophecy. The words pierce something deep inside her, the same place where her power hides, the same place her fear lives. Evelyn jerks her hand back, trembling. Don't touch me. Kael, if I meant to harm you, little wolf, you wouldn't be breathing. His tone isn't cruel. It's factual, certain, a statement of what is. But there's something else beneath it, a flicker of restraint. Evelyn stumbles toward the door. Her bare feet slap the marble, the echo sharp, desperate. You think I'll just stay here? Kael. You die before you cross the gates. The wards around this place burn anything that bleeds wolf. She freezes. The truth in his voice hits like a blade. Then why save me? He studies her for a long moment. The piano hums again, soft notes pressing against the silence. Kael. Because your blood called to me. The words hang heavy. Too intimate. Too dangerous. Evelyn glares at him, her pulse a storm. You don't know anything about me. Kael. You think so? He steps closer again, until she can feel his breath against her temple. Kael, whispering. Your father is Lord Aldrich Drace, Alpha of the Crescent Pack, the one who betrayed the Moon Treaty and slaughtered his own to protect his throne. Your mother was not his first mate, was she? Her knees weaken. He knows. He knows. She shakes her head slowly, unable to form words. Kael. She was a vampire, beautiful, brave, foolish enough to love him. Evelyn's vision blurs. Images flash. Her mother's voice, soft as rain, whispering lullabies in the dark. The silver chains, the punishment that followed. Her voice cracks. Stop. Kael. I can't. You're written in every prophecy my seer ever spoke. She stares at him, the words slicing through her confusion. Prophecy? Kael. The moon and blood were never meant to unite. And yet... He reaches out again, brushing her jaw lightly, his fingers cold as winter. Here you are. The candles sway violently as her power flares, uncontrolled. The air thickens. The flames burn blue. Kael doesn't move. Don't blink. Kael. You think I'll hurt you, little wolf? No. I'll make you remember who you were before they bleak you. His tone is quiet, but it shakes something buried in her. A memory of being more than prey, more than rejected blood. For the first time, Evelyn doesn't know whether she's afraid of him or of herself. The castle seems to listen. Every creak of the floor, every flicker of light carries their tension. She whispers, almost to herself. Why me? Kael, softly. Because fate is cruel, and because I think you might be the only one strong enough to destroy it. She looks at him, truly looks, and sees not just a monster, but a man wearing centuries of grief like armor. His eyes, for a brief second, betray him. They show longing, loss, and something she can't name. The torch is calm, flickering back to gold. Kael turns away first, his cloak whispering against the floor. Rest. The answers you seek won't come from fear. He walks toward the shadows, and for a heartbeat, she's sure he'll vanish into them completely. Evelyn, you saved me. But why do I feel like I'm still trapped? He pauses at the doorway, the faint glow of his eyes catching the candlelight. Kael, because cages take many forms. Some you see, some you build yourself. Then he's gone. Evelyn lies back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling carved with symbols older than her bloodline. Her wrist still glows faintly where he touched her. The castle hums like a living thing. Outside, the wind howls, a wolf's cry carried across the frozen peaks. But deep within the hall, another sound rises, a heartbeat not her own. Strong, ancient, waiting. And though she doesn't yet understand it, that rhythm will change everything. Because the vampire who saved her wasn't her enemy. He was her destiny. The storm outside the castle had quieted, but inside the air trembled with secrets. Evelyn sat in silence, wrapped in the faint warmth of a crimson blanket, though nothing in this place truly felt warm. The walls whispered, portraits that moved when she blinked, flames that bent toward her as if tasting her fear. Every inch of this ancient fortress breathed Kael's presence, cold, commanding, eternal. Her body still ached from the river's fall. Bruises bloomed like petals along her arms, her heartbeat echoing too loudly in the hush. The scent of old roses and iron hung in the air, and beneath it, faintly, the pulse of magic. Her magic. It stirred uneasily under her skin, threatening to rise again. The door opened, and Kael entered without sound. No footsteps, no breath, no heartbeat. Only that strange hum, the vibration of power too old to be named. He carried no candle this time, only the glow of the moon following him through the window, like it obeyed him. She looked up at him, and for a moment, the weight of his gaze nearly broke her. He stood still, shadows clinging to his shoulders like armor. His voice came quiet, low, steady as the night itself. "Your fever's broken," he said. "The river tried to take you, but it seems even death hesitated." She wanted to thank him. She wanted to curse him. Instead, her voice came out as a whisper, raw and trembling. "Why did you save me?" Kael's eyes, silver threaded with crimson, didn't waver. "Because you don't belong to death yet." She flinched at the word belong. It carried too much history, too much pain. He saw it. Of course he did. He always saw too much. The silence stretched, heavy with things unsaid. Evelyn turned her face toward the window, to the night sky bleeding through torn clouds. The blood moon hung low, pulsing faintly, its light catching the scar along her collarbone. The mark she tried to hide, the mark her father gave her. "Every mark tells a story," Kael murmured. "That one screams." Her throat closed. For a heartbeat she thought she could hide from his eyes, from his knowing. But Kael was not a man who looked away. He stepped closer, the air tightening between them. "You're running from more than a pack," he said softly. "Tell me who hunts you." Her fingers trembled against the blanket. The words pressed against her teeth but refused to come. She'd spent years swallowing her truth, because speaking it only brought pain. But something about the stillness of his voice, the way it didn't demand, only waited, it cracked her silence. "My father," she whispered, "the Alpha of Duskvale." Kael's head tilted slightly, like the name stirred something distant. "And why would an Alpha hunt his own blood?" Her lips twisted. "Because I'm not his blood. Not really." "My mother..." She swallowed hard. "My mother loved someone she shouldn't have." The room seemed to hold its breath. Kael didn't speak. He let her words find their own path. "She was a healer," Evelyn continued, voice shaking. "Gentle, kind. But one night a vampire stumbled into our territory. Wounded, starving, dying. She hid him, fed him. He should have killed her. But instead, he kissed her. And she loved him. And from that love..." She looked down at her trembling hands. "I was born." Lightning cracked faintly outside, echoing the fracture in her heart. "I was never supposed to exist," she said. "A wolf born with vampire blood. A monster born from mercy." Kael's eyes glowed dimly in the dark. "Mercy is not a sin," he said quietly. "To them, it was." Her mind flashed, shadows, torches, voices chanting abomination. Her father's hand around her throat, dragging her before the pack, the sting of silver on her skin, the way the moon turned its face away that night. She could still hear his voice. "You are not my daughter. You are a curse that wears my name." Her voice broke as she whispered, "He chained me in front of the pack. Said he'd burn the impurity out of me. Said I'd thank him when the pain was gone." Kael's face changed, not in anger, but something far more dangerous, understanding. He moved closer, slow enough for her to step away, but she didn't. His hand rose, stopping inches from her cheek. The air between them throbbed, warm and cold at once. "And did the pain ever leave you?" he asked. She laughed, soft and bitter. "It became me." He let his hand fall. "Good," he murmured, "because pain remembers what others forget." The torches flickered, and for a heartbeat, she saw something in his eyes. Loneliness, as ancient as the stones around them. Kael turned away, his voice softer now. "I once believed pain was punishment. Then I learned it was the only proof I had left that I was still alive." She hesitated, then asked, "What happened to you?" He didn't answer right away. He walked to the window, the moonlight haloing his figure. "Once," he said finally, "I had a mate. She was mortal, fragile as sunlight. I thought eternity could hold her safe." His hand tightened on the windowsill. "But eternity is greedy. It takes what it wants. She died screaming my name, and I could not die with her. Silence swallowed the hall. Evelyn's heart ached. Not for him, not even for herself, but for the echo of grief that sounded too much like her own. When he turned back, his expression was unreadable, his voice stripped of its armor. They said the moon would send me a bride carved from blood and sorrow. I thought it was a lie. Until you bled on my floor. Something in her chest cracked open. She didn't know whether it was fear or hope or the cruel twist of both. I'm not your bride, she whispered. I'm no one's salvation. Kael smiled faintly, not mocking, just sad. Then be your own. His words settled into her like embers. Quiet, persistent, burning. For the first time, she looked at him not as a vampire, not as a king, but as someone broken in the same places she was. And the air between them shifted. Less hostile now, more fragile. Like something was waking that neither of them could stop. The piano in the corner began to play softly, though no one touched it. A melody both mournful and tender. The castle responded to his emotions, it seemed, a living echo of his will. Evelyn stood, her legs trembling, and walked toward him. The distance closed slowly, heartbeat by heartbeat. You talk like someone who's forgotten how to hope, she said. He looked down at her, the faintest smirk ghosting his lips. Hope is a human luxury. Then maybe you should remember what that feels like. Their eyes met. For the briefest second, the world narrowed to breath and silence and the pulse of something ancient binding them. But then, her chest flared, a sudden searing ache beneath her skin. The silver flame. It burst to life without warning, dancing along her veins like liquid light. Kael didn't move. He simply watched as the fire rippled through her body, reflecting in his eyes. Don't fight it, he said. That power isn't your enemy. It destroys everything it touches, she gasped. So does the sun, he said quietly. And yet we live by it. Her knees buckled. The power raged like a storm, threatening to tear her apart. Kael caught her before she fell. His cold hands steadied her burning skin, and where they touched, the fire calmed. Her breathing slowed. The pain eased. She looked up at him, shaken. What are you doing to me? He met her gaze, voice low. Dangerous, intimate. Balancing you. Something unspoken passed between them. Trust, fragile and uncertain, but real. He stepped back, releasing her slowly, as if afraid the connection itself might break her. Rest, he said. The night is long, and the world will not wait for you to decide who you are. As he turned to leave, she whispered, And who do you think I am? He paused at the doorway. The question isn't who you are, little wolf, he said softly. It's who you'll choose to become when the moon calls your name. And then he was gone. Evelyn sank to the floor, trembling. The moonlight framed her like a fragile painting. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the faint thrum of her pulse where his fingers had touched. The fire within her no longer screamed. It hummed, alive, waiting. In that silence, she realized something that terrified her more than death itself. She wasn't afraid of Kael Varen anymore. She was afraid of what she might become beside him. The corridor beneath the castle was alive in a way Evelyn had never felt before. Shadows twisted across the walls as if the stone itself breathed, and the air smelled of earth, old incense, and something ancient, something waiting. Every step echoed, but not in emptiness. It echoed in her chest, in the steady thrum of her pulse, in the faint flutter of the silver flame beneath her skin. Kael led her silently, his hand occasionally brushing hers, steadying, guiding. Not touching as a vampire might claim, but as someone who understood the fragility of life and power intertwined. The silence was thick, holy even, like a cathedral where no words dared enter. Finally, they came to the sanctum of shadows. Evelyn's breath caught. The space opened like the womb of the world itself. Columns carved from black stone reached toward the low-hanging ceiling, twisted like gnarled branches frozen mid-growth. Torches, though unlit, seemed to hum with latent energy, and the floor beneath them shimmered faintly, as though the blood of centuries ran just below its surface. And then she saw it. The murals. They sprawled across the walls in vivid colors that seemed to breathe. A wolf and a vampire queen, joined in flame, their eyes locked in eternal devotion and power. Their forms twisted and merged into one another, fire licking along fur and flesh alike, illuminating the prophecy carved beneath them in letters older than memory. The blood-bound bride will rise when moon and sun weep red. Evelyn's fingertips hovered over the mural, trembling. The stone beneath her hand pulsed like a heartbeat. Her veins throbbed in response, silver light threading beneath her skin like molten mercury. Every fiber of her being hummed in resonance. She could feel the ancestors of both wolves and vampires watching, whispering, calling. Kael stepped closer. The light of the mural reflected in his eyes, catching the ancient fire of something older than pride or fear. His voice was low, reverent, almost afraid. "You are not prey," he whispered, his breath brushing her hair. "You are the bridge." Evelyn recoiled slightly, her chest tight, as if the very weight of those words pressed her down. Bridge. Bloodbound. Prophecy. These were not titles she had asked for. She had survived her pack, fled her father, and barely claimed herself in the shadows of her own fear. And now she was the center of some ancient plan she could barely comprehend. Her hand pressed harder to the wall, and the silver flame leapt up her arm in response. Light, pure and scorching, spilled from her skin, tracing the murals as if following an invisible script. The wolf in the mural seemed to stir. The vampire queen's eyes glowed with inner fire. Evelyn stumbled back slightly, panic clawing at her throat. I can't," she whispered. This isn't me. I'm not the one in the prophecy. I'm just me." Kael reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. The touch was grounding, not commanding. But the surge of power beneath her skin pulsed stronger at his proximity. "It doesn't have to be who you think you are," he said. "It's who you are becoming. And even if you deny it, it already chose you." Her stomach churned, the panic folding into awe and fear. Every lesson from her past, every humiliation, every rejection, every time the pack had spat at her, every time the flame had burned uncontrollably beneath her skin, led her to this very moment. To this. Evelyn shook her head, tears pricking at her eyes. "I don't deserve this. I'm not strong enough. I'm broken." Kael's eyes softened, but the fire in them did not dim. "Broken isn't weakness," he said. "It's the starting point. You've survived death, betrayal, fear, and yet here you are, still standing, still breathing, still bleeding your own truth. That is strength no one else can claim." The flame in her veins flared again at his words, cascading through her body, dancing over her limbs. The murals pulsed in rhythm, as if answering her heartbeat, her fear, her defiance. The wolf leaned forward, as if sniffing the air of her soul. The queen reached out a hand painted in gold and crimson, her eyes imploring Evelyn to step into her own power. Kael's hand found hers. The touch was light, almost ceremonial, but when their fingers intertwined, the ground beneath them trembled, faintly, as if acknowledging the union of purpose, the alignment of blood and destiny. "You're afraid," he murmured, voice like a low drum. "And you should be. Fear is proof you're alive, but you cannot hide from what is coming. Every moment you hesitate, the prophecy waits, but the world will not." She stared at him, the words piercing deeper than any dagger. Fear, the flame, the prophecy, the weight of her mother's love, her father's hatred, the blood that ran silver and fire through her veins. And the pull of Kael, of the vampire who should have been predator and yet felt tethered. A gust of wind rattled the ruins, though no doors had opened. Torches flared as if ignited by the air itself. The murals shimmered violently. Evelyn's knees nearly buckled. I can't control it," she admitted, voice breaking. "Every time I try, it burns. I've always burned. I'll destroy everything." Kael did not flinch. He stepped closer again, placing a hand over the rising light at her wrist. And yet, he said softly, everything that burns can be tempered. You are not destruction. You are transformation. You are the proof that wolves and vampires, your bloodlines, your legacy, can unite. You are the first and last of your kind, Evelyn Drace. That is not a curse. That is a gift. She looked up, the tears in her eyes catching the silver light, reflecting in Kael's gaze. It was the first time she had ever felt seen, not as a monster, not as prey, not as a child of shame. Seen. The murals began to hum, faintly at first, then rising like the chorus of centuries. Whispers, voices, a low vibration that resonated in her chest and bones. The wolf's eyes in the mural glimmered. The vampire queen's lips moved, silent but urgent. Evelyn could hear it in her mind. Step forward. Claim it. Do not deny what you were born to be. And then, the silver flame erupted fully, spiraling up her arms, legs, and chest. It encircled her like a halo, illuminating the dark, holy sanctum with fire and light that was neither warm nor cold, but alive. Kael stepped back, awe breaking through his stoic mask. His voice was barely a whisper, trembling with something like fear and pride combined. You are not prey. You are not victim. You are the bridge. Evelyn's eyes met his, wide, burning with fear and wonder. I don't know if I can, she admitted, the words raw. I've never been more afraid in my life. Kael's gaze softened. Good, he said. Because fear is what will make you strong enough to survive the next step. The moon, the prophecy, the flames, they do not demand perfection. They demand courage. And courage is you, Evelyn Drace. For the first time, she believed him. Or at least, she believed that maybe, just maybe, the fire inside her could be guided. That maybe the prophecy wasn't a sentence, it was a choice. She let her hand linger on the mural. The veins of silver beneath her skin glowed, pulsing in perfect harmony with the painted wolf and queen. The silver flame whispered through her blood, ancient and alive, calling to every corner of her being. You are more than pain. You are the future. Kael knelt beside her, silent now, offering not guidance but presence. The air vibrated with the promise of destiny, the weight of the prophecy, and the unspoken tether that now bound their fates together. And Evelyn, for the first time in her 17 years of running, hiding, and surviving, felt a spark of clarity beneath the chaos. She was no longer just a half-shifter hunted by fate. She was something far greater, something terrifying, radiant, and irrevocably powerful. She was the blood-bound bride. She was the bridge between worlds, and the prophecy was awakening. The walls of the sanctum trembled as a distant roar rolled across the stone corridors of Varen Keep. Evelyn's pulse leapt into a frantic rhythm, silver veins beneath her skin pulsing in response, humming like coiled steel ready to snap. The prophecy had woken, yes, but the world had not waited politely. The world had come for her. A howl echoed, primal and jagged, slicing through the night. She recognized the scent before the shapes even appeared. Rogue wolves, twisted by fear and loyalty to a father who had branded her a threat long before she had even taken her first steps toward power. Their eyes burned with hatred and confusion, the moonlight catching in their fur as they poured into the castle courtyard. Kael's guards erupted into action, silver-tipped weapons and glinting blades flashing in the torchlight. Evelyn froze for a heartbeat, her instincts screaming. She should run. She should hide. And yet, some deeper, older part of her stirred, a fierce, unbroken line of fire she had barely dared to touch. The first wolf lunged, teeth bared, and something inside her snapped. Silver light surged across her arms as she partially shifted, claws scraping the stone. Her eyes glowed like twin moons, reflecting the blood-red hue of the sky outside. The silver flame coursed through her, amplifying every movement, every heartbeat, every breath. She did not hesitate. She struck, saving Kael from a wolf that had gotten too close. He turned, eyes wide, voice low and raw. You're stronger than you think. Stronger with me. The words sent shivers down her spine. She felt it. The bond, tenuous but undeniable, linking her strength to his. Each surge of fear, each spark of courage within her, echoed in him. And in him, the world seemed less dangerous, more manageable, more hers to command. But the battlefield was no friend. Wolves snarled, claws met teeth, vampires shifted midair, and torches flared and fell. The sound was deafening, the smell of blood thick in the air. Yet Evelyn moved with a strange clarity, the silver light tracing paths, marking her strikes with precision. She had never felt so alive, so electric, so terrifying. Yet when the dust settled, or seemed to, another danger rose. Kael's council of elders, faces pale and sharp as obsidian, emerged from the shadows, robes fluttering in the chaos. Their eyes burned with suspicion, anger, fear. "She carries the curse," hissed one, voice like gravel. "Her kind doomed us once before, and now she walks our halls." Evelyn froze, the words slicing through her. Cursed. She had heard it before, so many times, from her pack, from her father, from every whispering shadow of her past. And now, even here, in the supposed safety of Kael's realm, it followed her. Kael stepped between them and her, his body a shield, his voice like steel tempered in fire. "She carries salvation," he thundered, eyes locked on the elders. "You're too blind to see it." The tension fractured the hall. Murmurs rose like wind through dry branches. Accusations flew. Fingers pointed. The very air seemed to vibrate with rage and fear. Evelyn's chest tightened. She had been running her whole life, hiding from rejection, from power, from destiny. But now, here, even the man who had saved her could not stop them from questioning her. Her silver eyes flared, light spilling across the stone floor, her voice trembling but fierce. "If I must bleed to prove I'm worthy, then let the moon drink my blood." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. The elders recoiled, the guards blinked, and Kael's expression twisted. Pain and longing, desire and duty tangled in his ancient features. He wanted to protect her. He wanted to claim her as mate, as equal, as queen of his world and bridge to hers. And yet, the rules of his people, the weight of his throne, pressed on him like iron chains. Evelyn felt it too, torn between survival and the pull of power, between trust in Kael and fear of the consequences. Every muscle tensed, every nerve screamed, yet she stood her ground. The prophecy was not just her destiny, it was a test, and the world would not allow her a single step without trial. The elders whispered, shadows stretching like claws, muttering curses and prophecies of doom. And yet she could hear Kael's heartbeat through the bond, steady, grounding, an anchor amidst the storm. It called to her, and for the first time she realized that strength was not merely in fire or fang, but in connection, trust forged in danger, in intimacy, in survival. The first clash was over, but the war was far from finished. Wolves retreated only to regroup. Whispers of betrayal and fear lingered like smoke, and Kael's council stared at her as though they could strip her of her very soul with their eyes. Evelyn pressed her hands to her chest, feeling the flame that had erupted not from rage alone, but from determination, from hope, from refusal to be a pawn in a game centuries old. She would prove them wrong, she would rise, and if the moon and prophecy demanded blood, she would not falter. Kael's hand found hers, firm and grounding, and the bond between them pulsed, warm, steady, alive. "We will face them together," he murmured, but his eyes betrayed the truth. They both knew the next battle would demand more than courage. It would demand sacrifice. And Evelyn, feeling the pull of destiny coursing through her veins, knew something she had never felt before. Fear could no longer bind her. She was fire, she was wolf, she was flame and blood and destiny, and the world would tremble before her. The battlefield was a muted shadow of chaos now. Smoke curled from charred wood, and the scent of blood lingered, heavy in the night air. Evelyn knelt by a shattered fountain, the silver light of the moon catching the wet streaks of crimson along her arms and shoulders. Her breaths came shallow, uneven, as if she were trying to convince herself the night hadn't broken her. Kael approached slowly, each step measured, careful not to startle her. The flickering torchlight of distant guards cast long shadows, but the world seemed to shrink between them. Only moonlight, only the quiet hum of her silver veins, only the steady pull of the bond. His voice broke the silence, low, reverent, almost afraid to disturb the fragile tension. "You shouldn't be here alone." Evelyn flinched at the sound, instinctively shrinking back, but her fear was no longer the same. It was layered now with the raw ache of longing, the strange comfort of his presence that both terrified and steadied her. "I'm fine," she whispered, though the truth trembled in her words. "I can handle this." Kael knelt beside her, close enough that the faint scent of his essence, ancient, magnetic, dangerous, washed over her senses. He didn't touch her at first. He simply watched, and in his gaze she saw a reflection of her own pain. "I shouldn't," he murmured, almost to himself. "I shouldn't let myself care. Loving you, it could destroy everything I've built. My kingdom, my throne, even me." Evelyn's fingers tightened around the cold stone beneath her, the weight of her own scars pressing her into silence. She wanted to speak, to explain that she understood sacrifice, that she had lived it every day of her life. But words faltered. Instead, she let her gaze meet his, raw and unguarded. "I've always been alone," she admitted, voice soft, brittle. "Even when surrounded by people, I was invisible, afraid, hated for things I couldn't control. Maybe I've always needed someone to see me, truly see me." The air between them thickened, charged. She could feel it, the pull of destiny intertwining with the electricity of desire. Kael's hand hovered, trembling slightly before he let his fingers brush hers. That simple touch ignited the silver flame beneath her skin, warm and alive, a physical echo of the bond they shared. He leaned closer, voice husky. "You've always been more than you know. And I see you. Every part. Even the parts you think are broken." A shiver traced her spine. Her heart hammered as their breaths mingled, and for a moment, the world held its breath too. She could almost forget the war outside, the prophecy that clung to her like smoke, the pacts that would never forgive her. For a moment, there was only this fragile, dangerous intimacy that both terrified and exhilarated her. Evelyn's lips parted, words caught in the swirl of fear and desire. "If fate wanted me to love you," she whispered, "why did it make me bleed for it?" Kael's amber gold eyes softened, almost unbearably tender, yet laced with a deep, consuming intensity. "Because even destiny envies what burns between us," he replied, voice low enough to be more felt than heard. Their fingers intertwined fully now, a silent vow of trust, of connection. She felt it. Her power thrummed with his nearness, wild, unrestrained, yet curiously safe. The bond pulsed, soul to soul, a tether forged in blood, flame, and unspoken promises. Kael's thumb traced the line of her jaw, hesitant, reverent, as though he feared she might vanish if touched too roughly. "You are not prey," he said softly, almost reverently. "Not here, not ever, not while I draw breath." Evelyn's chest rose and fell rapidly, not from fear but from the overwhelming gravity of the moment. She had lived with betrayal, with rejection, with endless warnings that her existence was a curse. Yet here he was, not recoiling, not judging, simply recognizing the truth she had buried beneath decades of fear. The moonlight gleamed off her silver-infused skin, highlighting the raw beauty of her scars, the subtle flare of her power. And for the first time, Evelyn let herself believe in the possibility of being seen, of being wanted. Not for her bloodline, not for her strength, but for her. A sudden shimmer of red flickered across the edge of her vision. A warning, a vision, a whisper of the prophecy trying to claw back control. The bond between them pulsed with urgency, but Kael didn't flinch. Instead, he pressed closer, grounding her with presence and whispered confidence. "You are not alone," he said, the words low and unwavering. "Even if the world falls against you, Even if your blood is meant to be the beacon or the curse, you will not face it alone. Evelyn's breath caught. Her heart ached with the weight of everything she had endured, and yet, in this quiet, intimate moment, she felt a fragile hope stirring. Hope that love could exist even amidst blood, flame, and prophecy. They leaned closer, almost touching, almost crossing the line between need and destiny, desire and duty. The air vibrated around them, heavy with anticipation, with unspoken confessions, with a connection that neither time nor fear could sever. And then, like a knife through the calm, a vision slammed into her mind. Flashes of blood-red moons, wolves collapsing, shadows of enemies unseen. A whisper of fate that reminded her the world would not pause for them. The almost kiss shattered, leaving them trembling on the precipice of longing and fear, each acutely aware that the next moment could demand more than trust. It could demand sacrifice. Evelyn looked at him, silver fire flickering beneath her skin, and whispered almost to herself, "Can we survive what's coming?" Kael's voice was steady, though it carried the weight of centuries and unspoken pain. "We will," he said, amber eyes locking with hers. "Because together, we are more than prophecy. We are fire. We are wolf and vampire. We are the bridge no one else can cross. Trust me, or leave. But know this, if you choose to leave, there will be no coming back." Her chest tightened. Fear, desire, hope, and defiance collided in a storm of emotion. She wanted to run, to hide, to protect herself from the impossible weight of what they shared. But the pull of the bond, the pull of destiny, the pull of him anchored her. Evelyn swallowed hard, a single tear catching the moonlight. She didn't speak. She only let her hand squeeze his, letting the flame of trust, the spark of connection, burn between them in silence. And in that silence, the world outside, the chaos, the enemies, the prophecy, faded for a heartbeat. Here, in this stolen moment, they were not hunted, not cursed, not divided. Here, they were just two souls trembling on the edge of something ancient and eternal. Here, trust was the only weapon against a world that wanted to see them fall. The silence of the castle corridors felt heavier than any battlefield. Evelyn sat against the cold stone wall of her chamber, the flicker of torchlight barely illuminating the bruises along her arms and the smears of dried blood that clung to her torn clothing. Every shadow seemed to move, every whisper echoing with accusation and fear. She had trusted Kael, had allowed herself to feel something resembling hope. And now it all shattered like glass beneath the weight of a revelation she could never have anticipated. The door creaked, and she stiffened. Not Kael. Not yet. It was Kael's advisor, the one who always lingered in the corners of the throne room. Eyes sharp as knives, a smile that never reached them. Evelyn Drace, the voice was soft, almost hypnotic, yet it cut sharper than any blade. "You were never meant to walk freely among the Dominion. Your blood, your lineage. It carries the curse of the Varen line, a curse our ancestors tried to bury, tried to destroy." Evelyn's heart stuttered, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and terror. "A curse? What do you mean?" Her voice cracked, the vulnerability raw, exposed. The advisor's gaze was merciless. "Your very existence threatens the balance of our world. You are a weapon, Evelyn. Not a bride, not a savior. A weapon forged in blood and sorrow, designed to bring ruin." Her mind spun. She remembered Kael's hands, the warmth, the tenderness, the bond that had ignited inside her. The first spark of trust that had dared to bloom amidst fear and chaos. And now, it all felt like a lie. She had been seen, but perhaps not for her. Perhaps Kael had only seen the prophecy, the threat, the power waiting to burn everything he loved. Her nails dug into the stone beneath her, and a low hum began in her chest. Silver veins traced along her skin, faint at first, then growing, thrumming with anger, betrayal, and hurt. She had been cornered, yes, but not defeated. Not yet. "You see me as a weapon," she whispered through gritted teeth. but even a weapon can decide its aim. The chamber walls trembled as the first ripple of her power surged. Her blood burned with silver fire, the same force she had tried to master, tried to hide. It leapt from her veins in pulsing arcs, igniting the stone, sending torches clattering to the floor. Shadows danced violently across the walls, and a roar of energy echoed through the castle halls. Kael's name tore from her lips in a raw cry, but it was swallowed by the roar of silver flame and the crackling collapse of the ceiling above. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't wait for approval. She was the fire now, the storm, the reckoning. And then the door burst open. Kael arrived, eyes wide, amber light flaring in the dim hall, his cloak trailing behind him like a shadow of the night itself. Evelyn. His voice carried the weight of desperation and disbelief. But she didn't turn. Not yet. Her chest heaved as the realization hit her. The man she had begun to trust, the one who had called her fire and bridge, might never understand the depth of her pain. He could not shield her from the truths she carried. He had loved a version of her that existed only in fragments, shadows, and silver light. "You said you saw me," she choked, her voice breaking as tears streaked through the silver flame running across her skin. "But all you ever saw was a weapon." Kael stepped closer, every instinct screaming to reach her, to cradle her in his arms, to promise that none of this was her fault. But she flinched, instinct screaming that closeness might mean chains, might mean betrayal. Her bond with him pulsed violently, a wild tether of anger and hurt. "I am not your possession," she spat, her words flaming the room further. The walls cracked, the stones groaned, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with her power. The silver fire pulsed outward, consuming the shadows, the torches, the remnants of calm. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, it drew back. She was spent, trembling on the stone floor, breath ragged, tears streaming freely. Kael rushed forward, his hand barely grazing hers before she snapped her eyes up to him, eyes wild, silver glowing faintly in the dim torchlight. "You don't get to save me," she whispered. "Not yet. Not ever. If I am to walk this path, I walk it alone." Before Kael could respond, before he could reach her fully, she shifted. The silver flame surged, wrapping around her form like a cloak of vengeance and sorrow, and in a heartbeat, she vanished from the chamber, leaving only scorched stone, the faint echo of her heartbeat, and the whisper of a vow. "I will not be chained by love, by prophecy, or by fear. I am mine." Kael sank to the floor, anguish gripping him like a vice. His eyes swept over the ruin of the chamber, the scorched marks, the fragments of her power lingering like smoke in the air. He had been too late, always too late. And yet, beneath the heartache, beneath the rage and the betrayal, a single thought consumed him. She had left, but she had chosen herself. That defiance, that fire, it was hers alone. But it was also the spark that had drawn him to her in the first place. The castle was silent now, broken and scarred, a mirror of the fracture in their bond. Outside, the moonlight was pale and distant, as though it, too, recoiled from the betrayal. And somewhere in the shadows, the prophecy whispered on, promising that this was only the beginning. Kael's voice broke the silence, a desperate whisper to the empty hall. "Evelyn, come back to me. Don't vanish into the night, not when the world still needs your fire." But she was gone. The sky bled red, a blood eclipse blotting out the stars, casting the Dominion in a surreal, haunting twilight. Evelyn stood at the edge of the battlefield, her cloak of moonfire rippling in the wind, silver sparks igniting wherever it touched. Below her, the forces of the Dominion and her father's loyalists clashed. Wolf and vampire, fang and claw, steel and shadow. The cries of combatants, the snapping of bones, the hiss of fire met the thunder of hooves, all forming a symphony of chaos that shook the earth beneath her. She inhaled sharply, the air tasting metallic with blood and ozone, her heart pounding in rhythm with the pulse of her silver flame. This was no longer about escape, or fear, or betrayal. This was the moment she had been forged for, the moment the prophecy had whispered in her veins, in the hum of her blood, in every scar carved upon her skin. She was not a pawn. She was not a weapon meant to be wielded. She was the reckoning. The first movement of power unfurled from her. Silver fire coiled along her arms and neck, rising into a tornado of light that licked the clouds above. The battlefield froze for a heartbeat. Soldiers faltered mid-strike. Wolves howled and skulked, sensing the ancient energy coursing through the half-shifter who had once run from death. Her voice rang out, clear, echoing across the valley, strong enough to halt the fiercest warrior mid-swing. Evelyn, I am not your sacrifice. I am your reckoning. The words carried weight, a decree, a challenge, a release of centuries of suppressed fury and power. The silver flame surged outward, touching every dark corner, unraveling the curses her father's line had embedded in blood and stone. Ancient wards cracked, chains of shadow dissolved, and the battlefield was washed in blinding light, silver and crimson blending in a storm of raw energy. Kael emerged from the shadows of the fray, his eyes blazing amber, his presence a force that could calm hurricanes and ignite stars. He moved toward her, each step a deliberate assertion of power, yet careful, cautious of the force she now wielded. And when they met, their powers collided and entwined, a union of fire and shadow, wolf and vampire, past pain and present resolve. The light surged, a radiant explosion that made the earth tremble, the sky scream, and the armies of men and beasts pause in awe. Kael, breathless, powerful. Evelyn, together. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a warning. It was recognition. The acknowledgement of a bond forged in fire, in blood, in shared torment, and now tempered into unstoppable power. She reached out, and their fingers brushed, sparks of both silver and amber igniting where they touched. A signal to the world that prophecy and choice, destiny and will, had converged. The silver flame expanded, no longer confined to her body but flowing outward, bridging the dominion and the cursed lands beyond. Wolves halted mid-leap, vampires froze mid-air, swords lowered, claws retracted, and in the midst of chaos time itself seemed to bend. The ancient curses her father had whispered over generations, meant to break her, to destroy her, disintegrated into stardust, falling like ash around her feet. Evelyn's chest heaved, her body trembling with exertion and rage, but her eyes shone, blazing, alive, unafraid. The power she had feared, the fire that had once driven her to flee, now obeyed her fully, acknowledging her as its master. Every fear, every moment of humiliation, every scar became a channel for her strength, and the world knew. The half-shifter, the girl who had been hunted and betrayed, was no longer prey. Kael stepped fully beside her, protective and reverent, his aura merging seamlessly with hers. The union of their powers sent a shockwave through the battlefield, flattening walls, shaking the earth, igniting silver flames along stone and timber alike. Soldiers fell back, packs scattered, and even the sky seemed to bend toward them. The eclipse glowing brighter, framing her like a queen carved from shadow and moonlight. Evelyn, commanding, radiant. Let this night remember who I am. Let the world kneel to the truth. The prophecy is fulfilled. I am not a bride to be claimed. I am the bridge. I am the flame. I am everything they tried to bury. The Dominion's forces, once fractured and fearful, felt the shift in the air. Wolves bowed instinctively. Vampires halted mid-flight, and the energy around her called even the lost and wandering elements of magic in the land to her side. Power responded to power. Recognition responded to recognition. The prophecy, whispered through centuries, fulfilled not as a curse but as liberation. Kael drew closer, whispering into the roar of the moment, their voices mingling in the thunder of energy. Kael, you are the fire that burns even the night away, Evelyn, the bridge that unites worlds, the queen the bloodlines feared and the world will remember. A final surge of silver flames shot from her core, coiling around her like a crown of light, and in that instant, she saw everything clearly. The betrayal, the torment, the loss, the fear, all had led to this moment. She was whole. She was unstoppable. She was hers. The battlefield fell silent under the eclipse, the armies pausing in awe and fear. Kael's hand brushed against hers, the connection deep, intimate, unbreakable. She met his gaze, no words needed, only understanding, only trust, only the knowledge that whatever came next, they would face it together. The light finally began to fade, settling into a shimmer over the land, silver and red entwined in quiet victory. Evelyn's chest heaved, and she looked toward the horizon. Not as a hunted girl, not as a weapon, not as a pawn of prophecy, but as the living bridge between worlds, a fire unbound. Kael's voice was soft now, reverent, intimate. Kael, the prophecy is complete, but your story is only beginning. Evelyn's lips curved into a small, defiant smile, the weight of power, pain, and choice resting squarely on her shoulders, and she welcomed it. She was no longer a sacrifice. She was the reckoning. The battlefield lay quiet now, the echoes of war fading into an uneasy hush. Smoke curled from shattered battlements, mingling with the lingering scent of iron and charred earth. Wolves shifted restlessly at the edges, tails low, ears twitching to sounds only they could hear. Vampires hovered in the shadows, wings folded, watching her with reverent caution. And at the center of it all, Evelyn stood, her chest rising and falling with ragged, deliberate breaths. Every inhale tasting of ash, power, and the remnants of battle. Her crown, formed from silver ash, shimmered faintly in the dim light, delicate yet unyielding, like her. The shards of prophecy, centuries of whispered warnings, and the unbroken chains of destiny seemed to gather around her, drawn to the flame she embodied. Every fiber of her being vibrated with triumph and terror, the weight of power pressing against her heart, forcing her to confront the stark truth. She had survived, yet survival demanded a toll. Kael knelt a few paces away, his form cloaked in shadows, eyes amber and unreadable. The fire of the silver flame reflected in them, casting a kaleidoscope of light across his stoic features. His jaw clenched, not from anger, but from the turmoil of emotion he refused to show. Fear, longing, devotion, and an unbearable ache for a bond that might be broken at any moment. He reached for her, but paused, hesitant. His fingers hovered over the shimmering edge of her crown, aware that any movement might shatter the fragile balance between her autonomy and their connection. In that silence, thick with ash and moonlight, he realized that power could be a gift, but it could also be a cage. Kael, voice low, strained, almost a whisper. Evelyn, if I reach for you now, will you let me? Or will the crown and the fire consume what we might have? She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze drifted to the horizon, where the first slivers of dawn fought against the lingering darkness. The red moon had faded, leaving a sky bruised with purple and silver, the aftermath of the eclipse etched across every cloud. Her mind replayed every betrayal, every scar, every moment she had been forced to flee, to hide, to deny her own power. She had been hunted, humiliated, and feared by those who were meant to protect her and by those who claimed to love her. And now, standing at the apex of everything she had endured, she felt the weight of every expectation pressing down like the cold edge of a knife. Evelyn, soft, haunted, almost to herself. Every crown has a price, even freedom. Her whisper floated across the battlefield, carried by the ashes of fire and smoke, brushing against Kael's consciousness, tugging at the fragile threads of his restraint. He felt the raw truth in her words. The cost of power was never just physical. It was emotional, spiritual, and irrevocably intimate. To claim her destiny meant she could never be untouched, never fully safe, and perhaps never truly hers alone. The silver flame pulsed faintly along her skin, a subtle reminder that her power was alive, sentient even, demanding recognition, respect, and fear. It responded to her heartbeat, to the surge of adrenaline that had carried her through countless battles. And as she stepped forward, the remnants of ash spiraled around her like a protective veil, silver motes dancing in the morning light, fragile yet defiant. Kael rose slowly, the tension in his body evident, but so was his awe. Every step he took toward her was deliberate, reverent, yet tinged with the knowledge that proximity to her fire could consume him. His own power, ancient and controlled, seemed small against the raw force she now wielded. Yet he could not, would not, leave her standing alone, even if it meant risking everything he had sworn to protect. Kael, voice resonant, rich with emotion, you've become more than the stories, more than the legends whispered in fear. You are the flame they could never extinguish, the bridge they could never sever. And I will not stand in your shadow. I will stand with you. Her eyes met his, silver glowing faintly beneath the surface, betraying a storm of emotion she could no longer hide. Anger, fear, sorrow, longing, they all swirled together, tangled in a web she had tried to control for years. In that gaze, Kael saw everything she had endured and everything she had yet to confront. The air seemed to still around them. Time itself bent to the weight of their connection. Wolves and vampires alike sensed it, instincts whispering that this was a moment beyond allegiance, beyond battle, beyond destiny. It was a choice of heart and perhaps the final test of trust. Evelyn, voice trembling, yet resolute. If anyone chooses to follow me, it won't be out of fear. It won't be for power. It will be because they see what I see. A world we can rebuild together, or fall apart trying. Kael stepped closer, close enough that the warmth of his presence brushed her arm. The silver flame pulsed in response, flaring faintly, acknowledging him, acknowledging the bond that had been forged through fire, blood, and survival. Every inch of their shared space vibrated with the tension of unspoken words and feelings too dangerous to name. Kael, softly, intimate, a confession meant only for her. I've stood through centuries of darkness, Evelyn, but nothing has ever demanded my soul like you do. And I will follow, not because I must, but because I choose to. The battlefield, the ashes, the lingering echoes of screams and triumph, all faded into insignificance against the gravity of that moment. Her chest rose and fell, her heart hammering like a drum in her ears. She felt every scar, every betrayal, every moment of rejection converge into this 1 second. The choice to trust, to step forward, to allow connection despite the cost. And then, as if the universe itself waited on her decision, she lifted her chin, silver eyes glimmering with tears and fire, and breathed a whisper that carried through every shadowed corner of the Dominion. Evelyn, would you follow me? Not for what I am, but for what we could be. The question hung, heavy and fragile, unanswerable yet undeniable. The silence stretched, filled with the hum of energy, the shiver of creatures sensing the unbreakable force between them, the lingering scent of ash and iron. It was a cliffhanger of the soul, an unspoken challenge to every heart listening. Would they choose courage, or would fear dictate their allegiance? And then, the narrator's voice weaves in, soft as twilight, haunting and poetic. Would you have chosen her, or feared her too? Is she a savior, or just a girl cursed with too much fire? If this story has set your soul alight, if you felt the heat of her heartbeat and the pull of destiny, subscribe to Moonlight Mate Stories. Here, every heartbeat tells a tale written in moonlight and scars. Every flame tells a story that refuses to die. The echoes lingered. The silver ash swirled gently around Evelyn's crown, her shoulders squared, the weight of prophecy on her, but tempered by the fragile, trembling hope that maybe, just maybe, she was not alone. Kael remained at her side, an anchor in a storm all at once, their fates intertwined, poised on the precipice of all that could come next. The camera of the mind pans back, showing the Dominion in quiet awe, the battlefield still smoking, the first tendrils of dawn brushing the horizon. Wolves watch, vampires bow slightly, and the universe itself seems to pause, waiting for the next choice, the next heartbeat, the next spark of destiny. The night has passed, but the story is far from over. The first shards of dawn cut across the horizon, bleeding pale light into the valley of ash. Smoke curled lazily from the remnants of battle, drifting in ghostly tendrils that clung to every charred rock and broken battlement. The air tasted of metal, fire, and the bitter tang of loss, a silence born of devastation and uneasy triumph. Evelyn walked alone, each step deliberate, crunching softly over blackened earth, her cloak trailing like the tail of a shadow she could neither escape nor embrace. Every breath drew in the memory of the past hours. The screams, the chaos, the silver fire that had surged through her veins like a living thing, demanding acknowledgement, demanding fear. Her chest rose and fell with ragged determination. She was whole and broken all at once, a paradox of fury and fragility, of power and self-doubt. The crown of silver ash atop her head weighed heavier than any metal, yet it was light compared to the burden of her own heart. Behind her, the valley held its secrets. Shadows twisted along the edges of her vision, flickering and shifting like smoke caught in wind, as if the remnants of her enemies and the whispers of forgotten ancestors lingered in the spaces where light dared not reach. The wind stirred them, weaving the scent of old blood and dark prophecy into the chill of dawn. Evelyn felt it prick the back of her neck, that invisible pressure of being watched, the sense that the world, or something in it, was not done with her yet. She slowed, instinctively alert, the silver flame within her, pulsing faintly beneath her skin. It was no longer a surge of panic or raw energy. It had become an extension of her, an intimate partner in her every thought, every heartbeat. Yet even as her power whispered its loyalty, doubt crept at the edges of her mind. Had she won, or merely postponed what was yet to come? Could she trust that Kael, her mate, would survive the storm that her very existence might summon? A movement shifted in the shadowed valley below, subtle yet undeniable. A figure, tall, sinewy, and ancient, emerged from the folds of the mist. Its presence was deliberate, silent, predatory. Evelyn's instincts screamed a warning, a pulse of primal alertness that rippled through her shifter blood. She did not need to see its face to know it. This was not a follower, nor a friend, nor the remnants of her father's pack. This was something older, something patient, something that had waited through centuries for her moment. The voice came then, barely above the whisper of the morning wind, yet it carved itself into her mind with the weight of prophecy. Shadowed voice, deep, resonant, chilling. The true alpha hasn't risen, yet. Evelyn froze, her breath caught between the awe of survival and the icy grip of foreboding. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to ignite her flames and strike before the threat could make itself fully known. Yet she remained rooted, compelled by the mixture of fear and curiosity that only the weight of destiny can inspire. She sensed it in the soil beneath her boots, in the chill of the wind brushing her face, in the echoes of the prophecy she had barely begun to comprehend. The valley seemed to stretch infinitely before her, a wasteland of ash and memories, broken trees clawing at a sky tinged with rose and gray. Wolves slunk along the edges, silent observers, their eyes reflecting both caution and reverence. Vampires lingered in the ruins of the old battlements, their silhouettes elongated and motionless, their gaze fixed upon her as though they too recognized the stirrings of something monumental. Every creature, mortal and immortal, seemed to hold its breath in unison, waiting for the inevitable. Evelyn's own heartbeat thundered in her ears, a rhythm that resonated with the pulse of the land itself. She felt the silver flame coil within her chest, aware of the challenge lingering just beyond perception. This alpha, unseen yet undeniable, was not merely a threat. It was a test, a herald of trials she had yet to endure. And somewhere in the recesses of her mind, beneath fear and fatigue, a spark of thrill ignited. Evelyn, whispering to herself, voice low and fierce, "Then let it come. Let it see what I am, and what I will become." The shadow did not move closer, yet its presence was oppressive, stretching tendrils of anticipation and menace into her consciousness. The air itself seemed to hum, vibrating with the residue of ancient power, as though the valley had become a living witness to the collision of past, present, and future. Every step Evelyn had taken, every choice, every heartbeat had led to this precipice, and yet she understood. This was not an ending. This was the edge of a story still being written, the cliff before the next leap. Kael's absence in the moment weighed on her subtly. a reminder that even those closest to her could not protect her from destiny's demands. She would face this alone, as she had learned to do, as she had been forced to do countless times before. But she also knew, deep in the marrow of her bones, that she had grown stronger. The silver flame was hers. The bond with Kael was hers, and the fury that rose within her at injustice and betrayal had become a weapon, precise, controlled, unstoppable. And then the valley shifted subtly, the shadows twisting with deliberate intelligence. A whisper of movement in the mist, a shape bending with unnatural speed, the hint of glowing eyes reflecting the dawn. All signs that this unseen presence was measuring, calculating, waiting. Evelyn tensed, every muscle coiled, every sense alert. She could feel her power thrumming through her veins. The silver flame flaring faintly along her collarbone, her hands, her wrists, a warning, a herald, a shield. The whisper came again, this time more deliberate, the words shaped like ice and smoke. Shadowed voice. She is not the only one. The reckoning has only begun. The words carved themselves into her consciousness, heavy with implication. Evelyn's chest tightened, a mixture of anticipation and fear, of exhaustion and readiness. The battlefield behind her, the Dominion's ruins, even the fleeting moments of victory all seemed inconsequential compared to the weight of what had been foretold. She exhaled slowly, her breath fogging in the cold morning air, and let the ash swirl around her once more, protective, defiant, radiant. For the first time in centuries, the valley was silent, not because of death, but because of reverent pause. Nature, magic, and the remnants of mortal and immortal watchers alike seemed to recognize that history was pivoting. Balanced on the sharp edge of a single choice, a single heartbeat, a single soul who could unite or shatter worlds. And Evelyn stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, her crown of silver ash catching the first true rays of sunlight, her eyes reflecting fire and determination. The shadow lingered, patient, unseen, an omen that would shape the next chapter of her destiny. She did not falter, she did not flee. She simply walked, the valley stretching ahead, silent witnesses, the silver flame alive in her veins, the whisper of prophecy etching itself deeper into the air. Evelyn, voice firm, resolute, almost a vow. Then let the world see. I am not afraid, not of fire, not of shadows, not of the Alpha to come. I am here. I am hers. I am mine. And I will rise. The narrator's voice drifts, slow, ominous, prophetic, lingering over the valley, over the shadows, over the weight of everything yet to come. The dawn is here, but the story is far from over. She walks alone, but the echoes of fate trail behind her. Something ancient watches. Something patient waits. And the true Alpha, the reckoning, has not yet risen. To be continued, only on Moonlight Mate Stories, where every heartbeat writes a tale of moonlight, scars, and fire. The wind swirled through the valley, carrying ashes, whispers, and the scent of promise and peril alike. Evelyn's silhouette grew smaller against the rising sun, but the intensity of her presence lingered in the minds of all who beheld her.